So let's get started on the frame by frame animation project. You will have access to a handout like this, probably in files on Canvas, but I just want to go over a couple things real quickly. Other ones we'll be going over in detail as the animation goes on. It's very important that anything that's written out here you actually do, because if you don't, you will lose points on the animation. So notice things like here, it says 10 seconds of animation plus 2 seconds with nothing at the stage at the end. So you actually need to accomplish that. And the reason is not for me to be, nitpicky instructor. It's because I want to make sure that that we both know that you know how to control the timing of your animation. For example, if someone told you to make a 15-second commercial that was animated and you said, yeah, look, I made it 17 seconds, they'd be like, well, you're going to have to figure out how to cut that down because we paid for a 15-second slot. And just don't use anything fancy. This is not the time to wow me with things that you know in the program. We are not using any form of tweening, whether you know what that means or not. Just keep it simple with frame by frame animation. In other words, if you do what I do, your chances are you're going to end up with a really good grade on this project. If you do decide to go a bit off script and not do exactly what I do, like, if I draw a flower and you decide you're going to draw a dog and a person doing similar things that the flower is doing, just make sure that you do all the same things that I do and in the same order that I do them so that I can actually grade your work. All right, so let's get started. So we need to know some of this first stuff here, that we'll be working at 12 frames per second, and that the stage size will be 1600 by 1200 pixels, and the stage color is this definitive color right here. So what I'm going to do is drag the cursor across that and Command C to copy that. And then I am going to open up the program. I would suggest that if this doesn't look super inviting to you, or you don't understand this, you've got to go back and watch those first videos. So I would really say this: if you haven't done the first 2 take-home quizzes yet, you should not be here. Back up, do those, and then join me. All right, so here we are inside the File New menu, and we said that our project was going to be 1600 pixels tall, and the height was going to be 1200 pixels tall. We were going to use a frame rate of 12, which it's already set to, but I'm just putting it back there for demonstration purposes. Platform type will be ActionScript 3.0, and then we click on Create. And since we've already accomplished a little bit, we should probably take this time to go ahead and start saving. So we'll go File, Save As. We'll navigate to an appropriate folder to save our work, and then we may as well get it ready to name, to turn in. So you will always name all the work that you turn in to me with your last name first, then your first name. There's underscores in between, which is achieved by hitting the Shift key and the hyphen key, and then a short description, and I like F by F or frame by frame. That's good and short. And we click Save, and as long as we remember to do that periodically, life will be good. We learned in the earlier videos, it's sometimes deceiving to figure out how big your stage is actually. So one thing that you should do always is just put the mouse over the hand tool. Don't actually click on it and select it, double click. That makes the stage fit in this viewing area so you can see the entire stage. Often using a white background is kind of boring anyway, and in this project we have a stage size that we're going to use. That also helps you understand where the stage ends. But of course the outside here is black, so I guess the most confusing color would be a black stage, but you could probably go in the preferences and change this background. If you ever need to do that, just let me know and I'll figure it out. Okay, so stage, double click on the stage, whoops, single click, sorry, and then we can go ahead and enter. See, right now we get the eyedropper automatically, but all we need to do is double click in here, and since we Command seed that information, we'll Command V to paste it, and then just hit return, and there is our background color. So we got a few steps out of the way. On the grade sheet, we are up to this stage right here, and now we're getting on with the animation. And the first thing that we are going to do is do a brush tool frame by frame with an example of an inchworm. So let me show you a done example of that, and then we will create something very similar. Okay, so you see that little worm going across there? That's what you're going to do. Okay, so let's start out here. By default, we get a layer and we get one keyframe, which right now is blank. We can tell that because it's just a donut hole. So keep an eye on that as you draw things. We are going to use the plain old classic brush tool. So when we click on that, we notice over here in our properties panel that we get the properties for it, and a fill color, a green, makes good sense for an inchworm, I guess. And you can see right now that's my brush size based on scrubbing this right here. We want to pick a size that makes about the size of the inchworm we want. Another way to change the brush size is using the left and right bracket keys. So I'm clicking on the left bracket key to make that brush just a little bit smaller. And then I'm going to click and I'm going to drag out my first worm. All right, so there's the first state of that worm. And now what I need is the second frame, because we are doing frame by frame animation. Now, a couple things I want to mention, and then I'll try not to mention them anymore, is you need to be following along with the grade sheet. You need to have already watched the video. So if your, for example, stage looks any different than this, covered all these things, you know, the essentials, properties, F6, saving, or all the F keys, file types, and so on. So again, look at the previous videos. Also keep looking back at this grade sheet, but I want to make an important point here. I said that you can be creative, come up with your own ideas, but this first idea needs to involve the brush tool in F7. So if the first part of your animation is anything but using F7 for blank keyframes and the brush tool to draw on those new keyframes, then you're not meeting the objectives of the assignment, and therefore I can't give you a decent grade for it. Okay, so we've got our first frame here. What we need to do is create a second frame. We hit F7, we get a blank keyframe. Now what we're going to do is draw the next state of that inchworm, which might mean that it is starting to lift up here. Well, that's a little harsh. So Command Z, I'll redraw that. Give me a little more curve here. There we go. All right, and if we scrub the playhead, we can see there's the first instance of the worm, and there it kind of quickly goes into its next state. And then we are going to click on the second frame, do an F7, give ourselves a third frame. Now, it gets kind of hard to remember what we had done previously, so what we're going to do is turn on onion skinning, which is this toggle button right here. And what that does is now, even though we're on our third frame, it shows us in like an opacity setting what came before. So we might start to think, all right, what does an inchworm do after it's inched up that much? I honestly don't really know, but I would say maybe it does something like that and then throws its body forward. So I'm going to hit F7 again and let its body come forward and down, and do a F7 again, and let's make him look like he's having a little fun here, like kind of slid forward as he came down. And then let's do a F7 again, and then let's make him inch up again. I don't like that. Command Z. All right, and then a F7 again, and we'll make him stand up. Do a F7 again, and you get the idea. We're just going to keep moving this guy along. We're going to quickly run out of stage here, so if you want to make yours smaller to get a little more, but all I'm really concerned about is that you get the idea what this F7's all about. So, and then if you want to see more of your onion skinning, you can just simply think of these as parentheses, and the parentheses cover what shows as an onion skin. So if I click and drag this back like that, I can see everything that came before, which will help me get an idea. Okay, what did I do last time when that happened? Yeah, I drew them down like that. And now I'm off the stage here already, but just to continue this out, I'm going to keep drawing off stage till he is all the way off stage. And that'll probably look something like that. Then maybe one more F7 with just, the little bit of his tail showing right there. And now that's pretty quick. As you can see, we've only covered about 12 frames there, and which means we're not even at 1 second. But let's see what it looks like. Remember, Command return. That creates the Swift file for us, and there is the worm inching along across our stage. Now it's playing a little jittery right now, but that's probably just because I have this recorder going at the same time as I'm working in Animate. Okay, and that indeed is much, much faster. I just paused mine and looked at it, so it is very jittery stepping here for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and close that. Get back to the program. So since it does go by so fast, let's give people a chance to enjoy it a little bit more. Maybe the first time that the worm actually shows up, let's let them sit there for a little while. So remember how we just copy one frame after a frame? We just simply do F5 like once. That means that this frame and this frame are identical. One more time. Now we have 3 identical frames. So I'm going to do that till it gives us about, over a half a second where the worm just pauses there before we get to see what it's going to do. That'll give the audience a chance to latch on to the fact that something's going to happen. In fact, let's make it just over a second just to get that actual across. So I'm going to do some F5s a few more times, maybe take it out to about frame 15 or 16 before anything happens. It does seem that it's going to be kind of useless for me to try to preview this stuff for you because at this stage size and with this recording software going at the same time, it's going to be pretty tough to show. So you just have to kind of take my word for what we end up with. And so that looked a lot better to me. It sat there for a second before we saw it move. And then we got to see it go through the sections. Now, if we say maybe in the middle, let's have it pause again, and let's turn the onion skinning off so it's a little more clear what's happening here. So he sits there for a half second, moves a little bit. Let's have him stop up here a little bit. When I say stop, I just mean let's make it go a little bit slower. So we'll click there. We'll do just maybe one F5, and then we'll go on to the next time he sticks up like this. And this time, let's click F5 2 times, just to make him stay there a little bit longer before he explodes, accelerates off stage. So if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that for the first thing. If you think it goes by too fast and you want to make it look a little bit better, then like I said, I'd make a smaller worm, and you could probably make this thing last maybe 4-5 seconds. I would try not to make any one section of this go over about 4-ish seconds, because remember, you're only allowed to have 10 seconds total for this animation. Now don't worry if at first your things line up sequentially where they go over 10 seconds. I will show you how to adjust that to make them overlap and thereby keep you within the 10 seconds. Let's just talk about some important concepts that we've learned. Remember, I said I was going to sneak some learning in here as well as showing you how to do the project. So the key things, and I would commit this to your notes, is learning the difference between a keyframe, which is these frames with the little dot, and the frames in between. There's some similarities there to old-fashioned animation, where these are the keyframes and these are what are called the tweens, where it means it's just like either the same thing drawn over and over again or a simple thing happening. But in our case, anytime there is a black dot in digital form, we refer to that as a keyframe.